From Mothman and Nessie to the spirit that haunts your home, welcome to Bob After Dark, a podcast about legends, lore, and the supernatural. So turn your lights down and your volume up and enjoy your trip to the shadows.
Hey there, children of the night, and welcome to a very special episode of Bob After Dark. I'm your host, the most that enjoys toast, Bob, and alongside of me, as always, is my ever wonderful, ever vampiric, ever cape-wearing, forever the heartthrob of Bob After Dark, my friend, my producer, Count Panic himself. Oh, hey there, Count.
Oh, hey, Bob. Back here, the veil is still at its thinnest.
Yes, you are correct.
Yes.
As we record this, it is November 1st. De la Mortis.
Yeah.
All Saints Day.
Yeah.
The veil remains thin, you see.
The veil continues to be thin, as thin as it is ever going to be, still here today as we stand, or sit.
Well, I mean, it also thins during Yule.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been over that.
It thickens in a couple days.
It thickens in a couple days. It's
Yeah.
kind of like cake batter. You see, you put it in the fridge, and it thickens up, and then you pull it out, and it thins out.
I mean,
I don't think cake batter actually thins out.
No.
Jello? I don't know, man. Help me out here.
But you got two. Don't forget, there's a little time between the two. You got the buffer that is Thanksgiving, but
then there's no thinning of the veil on Thanksgiving.
There's not. Sadly, no.
No.
Should be, but no.
No.
How's your Halloween, Bob?
Not too bad. How about yours?
Pretty good.
I got the hashtag Count Panic weekend update. I don't think that's a hashtag, but
No, it's not a hashtag, but
what'd you do for the Halloween weekend?
you know,
Anything
Bob,
exciting?
I did the typical Halloween stuff. You go to a couple of parties. You wear a. I didn't really go in a costume. I have the cape on standby just because
Isn't that just what you wear?
I'm a vampire as it is.
That just sounds like a normal everyday outfit.
So that's fine. But during Halloween, people think it's an actual costume, so I roll with that sometimes. But had a great Halloween. Trick or treaters in full force, Bob.
Yeah.
At least 300 there in the East Chicago neighborhood.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, Roxana. The Hammond and East Chicago, they all come to Roxana for some trick or treating. It's been like that for since I was a kid. But
that's great.
And we had some spooky weather, foggy during the day and in the evening as well. So all in all, a very enjoyable Halloween, Bob.
My Halloween. Would you like to know how my Halloween went?
How'd your Halloween?
My Halloween weekend went okay. Celebrated it Saturday. Went to the Windy City Ghostbusters did the Arts in the Dark Halloween parade.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
pretty
lot
cool.
of fun.
Yeah.
Handed out candy to the trick-or-treaters the other day, which was awfully nice.
There. Yeah.
Yep. I got the house all decked up outside for the trick-or-treaters, which,
I saw you had a giant marshmallow.
I did Biggie Puff, the Windy City. I normally never have him for Halloween, but somehow I ended up with him, so he up in the driveway he went, and it was all the kids loved him, and it was really cool.
That's cool.
And then here I am now.
Yeah.
I will tell you, every Halloween I usually try to do some sort of something spooky, right? So yesterday my big spooky endeavor was doing a seance to contact Dad. It's the first Halloween without him. Veil was thinned. Unfortunately, I did not reach Father, but I'm like, well, you know what? Dad's probably got something better to do. So today I woke up and made him an offerendum, which a little shrine you would do on De la Mortis. Set up a picture of him, put some candles up, put a bottle of CC next to him, and welcomed him into the home.
There you have it.
We have a special guest holding a record currently.
What?
As back-to-back appearances. I don't think you've ever done this. Steve Michaels, professional wrestler, paranormal investigator, and my best friend.
How's it going, Bob?
Oh, hey there, Steve.
Oh, hey there, Bob.
Normally I have to get like a month update from you, but you get you get the same treatment of the weekend update.
Yeah, it's been a minute since I've just had to give you like a weekend update.
Yeah.
Usually it's like here's
here's
my
6
month.
months.
Yeah. No. So this past weekend I was down in St. Louis.
Yeah.
I went to see my favorite band, Ludo.
Lufa, yes, you got to see Lufa.
Ludo.
Yeah, how was Lufa?
Ludo is amazing.
Yeah, what kind of music does Ludo play?
Ludo plays. They're kind of like they're like Weezer, but for like art majors and theater nerds.
Oh, that's kind. Well, I get it. Have you ever heard of
it's a
Ludo
lot
before, Company?
I've heard of Ludo before. They had when I was in high school, they had a nice string of hits as well. So
They did. They had a massive hit called "Love Me Dead," which was everywhere for a year. They did that on the Tonight Show.
I can tell you, I've never. I'm sure I heard it.
It's honestly, it's to all the listeners. It's actually probably up everyone's alley. They sing a lot about ghosts and monsters.
Why haven't we gotten them on the show?
We can do this.
Why don't you get Ludo on the show? Aren't you friends with them?
I am. No.
Okay, can we get Ludo on the show?
A lot of pressure now.
No, I mean we can. I'll send Tim Convey and Andrew Volpe. I'm going to send them all.
We want
Send them
Ludo.
all messages.
We want Ludo on the show, and I will make sure I call them not Lufa.
I appreciate. Yeah, they're. They do. The cool thing about them is they disbanded for about 10 years.
Sure.
And then in 2018 they came back, and they were like, we're just going to do Halloween shows. So every Halloween, the weekend before Halloween, they do 3 shows, and they do all their hits, and it sells out all the time.
That's a cool time, though. That's amazing.
It's great. It was great. I got to hang out with them. Got to hang out with a bunch of my friends down there. And it was and meet some people that I've been talking to for a while online that I haven't met in person, and overall it was a really great time.
That's amazing. So. I'm glad to hear that. You got to see Luda.
I got it. Ludo.
Yeah, Ludo's somebody else.
See, Ludo would be pretty cool too.
But yeah, no, that was my weekend. I got that's a cool new hat that's available at ludorock.com.
They could pay for the advertising space. Joking aside, real quick, folks, if this is your first time ever watching or listening to Bob After Dark, we are your weekly paranormal show where we talk about legends, lore, supernatural, things that go bump in the night, lights in the sky, and, of course, an interview that apparently Count Panic had that he didn't tell us about.
What happened?
Did you or did you not, or somebody involved in this station, interview Boris Karloff's daughter?
Oh, I didn't tell you about that one?
No, I found out after the fact. Now, I want to point out real quick that anytime somebody spooky comes through WJOB, they always throw them on my show, right? And I don't say that in a bad way. It's just when a paranormal or spooky guest gets involved, I'm usually the one that interviews them. And I am very grumpy with you that I did not get the interview with Boris Karloff's daughter.
Well, one, she's 85. She's in bed during this time, Bob.
That's fine.
I say,
listen, we can make it an early day recording. The fact, do you know about this? Did you know that he got the
Sarah
interview?
Karloff?
I had no idea. And
I
that's
did.
Fantastic.
Sarah Karloff, who, the daughter of Boris Karloff, she's trying to keep her dad. Well, listen, her dad's legacy is going to live on forever.
Right.
But she's out there. She's talking about the legacy of her father. But, the thing with Sarah Karloff, she's humble, very humble. She's she's not an actress really herself per se, but she travels still the earth talking about her dear dad, Boris Karloff. He was also the voice of the Grinch.
I knew you were going to say that. Yeah, he was the voice of the Grinch.
How about that?
He was a horror icon for, the golden age of cinema, man. That's amazing that she's still doing that. How did you get that? Did you just reach out and you're like, Miss, I don't know if her surname's still Karloff.
She goes by the Karloff.
That's fun. So. Yeah. Miss Karloff, could I interview? And she's like, yeah, no problem.
Well, sometimes those things run across as far as it goes here, and with Sarah Karloff, those kids. There's other kids as well. Lugosi's son's still alive, I believe.
Can we get Lugosi's son on the show, please?
Vincent Price has kids.
You could do a whole show with just the kids of
the kids of. Can
month.
You arrange that? Yes,
that's a month of shows.
I'm just saying. I understand. It's
get them all at the same time.
Fun fact, if we did get the children of Vincent Price's kids, probably, I don't know if the other ones are believers in the paranormal, but Vincent Price was actually a known fan of the occult. I actually have a vinyl record set of him speaking about witchcraft and his experiences and dabbling in the occult. I kid you not, yeah. Outside of the realm of him doing the horror stuff, he was an avid cat lover, and he studied the occult in his free time. So it's like, listen, if you could get his Vincent Price's kid to want to talk about that kind of a thing, I'm all about it.
Or get Vincent Price himself if we could do it.
Listen, if I could bring Vincent Price back, we might need to get you the Vincent Price mustache there, Count. I think that would look pretty good.
The mustache, he had a heck of a mustache as well. And Lugosi was buried in his cape.
Yeah. There's also a famous song that Bela Lugosi is dead, and, well, yes.
Not by Ludo, though.
Not by Ludo.
No.
Ludo.
That's another
Ludo.
band.
You know,
Although I'm a fan of Luda.
Luda. And what
Ludacris.
about Lufa?
I have one in my shower.
Oh, real quick, I got to give a shout out because I know he listens every week. We had this joke with Chris, our friend Chris Biddle, the other day. And it came up where I was like, oh, Steve's going to see Lufa. And Chris turned to me. He's like, Bob, that's a sponge. I was like, oh, a band can't name. Apparently, unless there's a band out there named Lufa, you should contact me. We could talk because I'll put you over.
Pretty good name for a band.
This week on November, we're theming a month. I know we had it themed last month. I didn't really announce it. It was just kind of sloppily, loosely themed. But this month, we're doing a really cool theme that I'm really excited to be doing. And that is the entire month of November, we are celebrating paranormal investigators and their work. So we're going to be getting different paranormal investigators on here, including a personal idol of mine will be coming on in a couple weeks, Don Bernanke. I am super jazzed about that because he is one of the inspirations.
The Weather Channel guy.
No, the historian and he is the Richard Crowe of Northwest Indiana. This man, and we did a tour with him. You were with me in the jail.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I was there.
Don is.
I get hit in the head a lot for my job.
I get it. I understand, but no, Don is an inspiration to me in what I do and now what I'm doing as a career. So I'm very excited to be like, yeah, I get to talk to Don Bernanke. And then we have some other paranormal investigators, which is why you're back.
That is why I am back.
You had a Tuesday available. And it's like, you want to come in?
Yeah. If I'm being honest, I never left the studio.
Wow!
I curled up.
Did Lufa play here?
There's a desk over there, and if you look, there's a pillow under there, and I curled up. It was nice. It was
Did
comfy.
Luda play in the studio?
No, I mean I left for that, but then I
okay.
came back and I was like, okay.
No, but we're excited to have you
I've
back.
been paying off the janitor. He's just letting me in and out. It's pretty great.
You realize that our janitor in the studio is Count Panic.
I gotta clean up after her.
Yeah, you guys, you have this weird guy, speaking of, before we dive into the show, you have this guy that looks just like you.
Me?
Yeah, you. I was on the show yesterday on WJOB, the afternoon rush hour.
Yeah, the rush hour.
I was with some guy named Tony Panic. Any relation?
Nah, it sounds like a phony Panic.
He looks a lot alike if you take the cape off.
Wow. Hey.
But I was on here yesterday with Casey from Northwest Indiana Paranormal and Chuck Poland, and we were talking about Northwest Indiana haunted spots. And there was this cauldron here that somebody brought a cauldron and was just dumping dry ice into this, and it was going all over the desk. Yeah. And Chuck was sitting there with a paper towel in between takes trying to clean it up, and I'm like, you guys are going to leave that for me on the Tuesday tomorrow night, aren't you?
How's
Luckily,
it feel?
It's nice and clean.
There, yeah.
I can see my reflection.
The cleanest it's ever been.
No snacks, though. We got snacks last week, and that's it. No more snacks on the show.
There's no more pears here.
There's no more pears or the beautiful chocolate-covered cherries. Those
cherries
awesome.
were delicious.
I
choked on one.
That's not good.
No, but they were still delicious.
Well, yes. All right, so we usually split up the show into 3 parts. One is when Steve's here, we get a little before show banter going on. And then we divide the show up into a couple parts. First one, we look at the weird spooky news of the week. That's where you, the fans, submit articles to me about anything weird, paranormal, cryptid sightings, any lights in the sky, or advances in science that borderline on science fiction, or just weird articles in general that I find interesting and relevant to our topic at hand. And then we dive into the meat and potatoes of the episode. The potatoes for me, the meat for you too. I don't eat meat, as you guys both know. And that's when we dive into the lore of the week, when we look at a topic at hand and we digest it.
Yeah.
Just like you would meat and potatoes.
Wow.
You doing okay over there?
I'm doing good.
Okay, I see you just scrambling here. I got the articles. Don't worry about it.
I'm good. I'm trying to figure.
You don't have to find an article.
Look, I know we all expect me to not have an article. That's
you had one last week.
That's the running gag. Here comes unprepared Steve. I literally was running late today, so I'm working. You know what? You go first.
You don't have to. I have articles. You don't have to go. I'll just ask you your take if that makes you happy. What if we have a double and you're like, oh, now you took the article I found in 30 seconds.
Okay, then
I'll take over. If you find one that's not during this talk, then you could take over one.
I will continue looking for one.
Sounds good.
And we will. and I will listen to yours.
I appreciate that. We have an old fan that has come back into the limelight. Her name's Whitney Ronan. I believe she's from Florida. And Whitney used to send like articles all the time, and that was a big help for me forever. Between her and Tim Banal from Coast to Coast AM, I never ran dry of articles. So the first two articles are from Whitney. Whitney, thanks for being back in the loop of things. I appreciate it. And our first article comes to us from IFL Science, which you guys could probably take a guess what that means. It is written by the senior journalist Tom Hale, and it is a giant river bigger than the Thames, unexpectedly found under Antarctica. A new study found that an under ice river stretches between over 460 kilometers. Which, how many miles is 460 kilometers, boys?
3.
More than 3.
4.
More than 4.
6.
More than 6. Let's move on.
5.
Transporting large fluxes of fresh water at high pressure. Scientists have been surprised to discover a vast river larger than the Thames that runs beneath the Antarctic ice sheet. Building on previous observations, the latest study further shows how an interconnected network of rivers, lakes, and marine ecosystems can be found deep beneath the largely inaccessible and understudied chunk of this planet. The river was recently discovered by researchers at the Imperial College London and the University of Waterloo, Canada, the University Malaysia Terengganu, pardon if I mispronounced that, and the Newcastle University. In a new study, the team used modeling and geographical data from airborne radar surveys to gauge the size and dynamics of this colossal river. Their results showed that the stretches between anywhere 460 kilometers, which by the way turned out to be 286 miles, neither one of you studied, transporting large fluxes of fresh water at high pressure. When we first discovered lakes beneath the Antarctic ice a couple decades ago, we thought that they were isolated from each other. Now we were starting to understand that there are whole systems down there interconnected by vast river networks, just as they might be if there weren't thousands of meters of ice on top of them. Professor Martin Seingert, study co-author from the Grantham Institute of Imperial College London, he said in this statement. So this thing is a massively giant river, bigger than the Thames, and there is a whole water canal connected underneath this frozen cap that we've never been able to really see before. And they're hypothesizing that there's an entire ecosystem underneath that sheet of ice that it could be either A, very extinct species of anything, or B, there's an entire ecosystem of things that we've never discovered before, microisms or whatever. I've seen enough horror movies to know that we probably shouldn't dig for this, but I'm not going to jump ahead of myself because it's #PanicSteak.
Well, that's the thing, Bob. You never know what's lying beneath the surface of anywhere, really. And there's got to be more to it down there than we actually really know. You bring up a good point. Seems like when they do this type of things in movies or something, it always goes wrong. But you don't know if you don't try. Maybe it's worth to take a little peek underneath the surface.
#Steve's Take.
So, I'm here long enough. I get a take now.
Got
this
a take?
is the greatest thing.
You have graduated. You get your own take, buddy.
It's taken me just over 3 years, but I finally get my own take.
If you can get that trending, you can go before Count Panic.
#Steve's Take.
Yeah, get that trending, and I will
upgrade.
I will pass it to you first before we pass it to Panic.
I'm going to pay Elon Musk $20 a month
to keep your blue check mark.
to let him just keep boosting #Steve's Take.
Okay.
The interesting thing about this is during the Ice Age, there were large alluvial streams that went through the glaciers.
Could we pretend that I didn't study my prehistoric times and I don't know what an alluvial water system is?
You never studied. Basically, as the glaciers were very large,
sure,
right? There would be channels through the glacier of water.
Makes sense.
And what would be in them would be the rocks and the dirt and the particulate of the ground underneath that would get picked up as the glacier is moving along slowly and will get picked up and then gets brought into this stream. and it's called an alluvial stream. This sounds very similar to an alluvial stream. The difference is we have never been able to really explore one or really witness one of this kind of magnitude. So when they say that there can be different kinds of life, it won't be like...
You're not going to see giant sea urchins or something.
Right.
But...
It's not going to be like The Lost World,
yeah.
Where there's a whole ecosystem. But there's a very real chance that there may be new kinds of microscopic life forms, planktons, protoplanktons, things like that.
Algae,
exactly. A very small single or small multicellular organisms down there that we may not be familiar of just because it's a brand new ecosystem. Much in the way that people find unusual creatures in the depths of caves in South America. You know, it's a very self-contained ecosystem, so things grow on their own and evolve on their own, and I'm kind of excited to see what they find.
Sure. I will say that it is amazing to me in the year 2022, almost 2023, we are still discovering new things about this rock we live on. You would think that we would have had everything mapped out, every square inch by now, with all this new technology and everything else, that we're still discovering new things about this rock we live on. And two, I've seen the movie The Thing, and I've seen both versions of The Thing, and I can tell you that nothing good will come out of us drilling into this. Have you ever seen The Thing?
I have.
You've seen both The Things.
I have.
Okay.
Yes.
Have you ever seen The Things, Count?
I have seen The Thing.
Yeah, both of them.
I don't know if I saw the second one. I saw the first one.
The second one would have been the John Carpenter one.
Oh, then I saw the John Carpenter.
Okay, but you never saw the black and white.
No,
one.
I did not.
Yeah, uncultured
I thought they made The Thing too. I didn't know.
No. I mean, the video game technically. I won't get to that another day. But
The Thing 2 Electric Boogaloo.
Yes, I will say that sometimes, yes, I get that it's important to see these things, but man, I've seen The Thing. I don't like the way it turns out. Moving on, next one also from Whitney. So thanks again. Once again, coming from IFL Science. Written by Dr. Katie Spalding, a freelance writer with the website. Speaking of bacteria and algae, there is a new cave bacteria that might help treat gluten intolerance or find life on Mars.
That's a varied scope of things that it could do. It could end gluten. We could find life on Mars.
Let's hear what the doc's got to say, okay? I don't think either one of us has the qualifications that this Dr. Spalding has. That
you don't know me, Bob.
Are you a doc? I don't know exactly what Dr. Katie is a doctor of, but we'll get to that. So anyway, there are potentially trillions of different microbe species on Earth, and we've identified the tiniest fraction of them. That's partly because finding them requires such cutting-edge technology, but is sometimes also down to the practical issues like just looking in the right place. A new project led by researchers from across the USA, Sweden, and Algeria have discovered some particularly exciting new types of bacteria, ones that they think may have significant consequences for the biotechnology industry. The reason they've gone undiscovered for so long, they were hiding hundreds of meters deep underground in a previously unexplored subterranean cave system. Again, things we're still discovering. It's unsurprising for new bacteria species to be found underground. By some estimates, nearly 3 out of every 4 microorganisms on Earth live in the planet's subsurface rather than on the surface. However, the discovery of these particular microorganisms have a pretty interesting implications, one that eventually could be game-changing for about 6% of the population. We found strains that could produce antimicrobial substances, or that could be broke down gluten, a substance that can cause inflammatory reactions in the intestines of many people, said, and pardon my enunciation, I might mispronounce the name, Nuttashaka Lee, a researcher at the Department of Ecology and Environmental Sciences at the Umeå University, Sweden, and one of the authors of the new paper on the discovery. In a statement, the bacteria were also found to be tolerant under the extreme conditions found in our digestive system. In other words, these newly discovered bacteria may have some important applications in treating people with gluten allergies or intolerances, and the researchers hope to fully investigate exactly this in the future. Still more were shown to be able to break down lactose and other common cause of digestive issues, which is really amazing. The other amazing part about this is that these things, the way that they exist and the way they break down the gluten and the lactose in us, would, if you put them on the surface of Mars with no protection, they would live on it. The reason being is the surface of Mars is very oxidizing, radiation-heavy environment where liquid water is not really stable for an extended period of time. But if you're able to put these things down there and they're able to hold on to whatever they can hold on to for such a long time, being able to live in this cave system, the theory is that if you put them just on Mars with nothing, that they can just be on Mars. So the question is, are these microisms from Mars initially? That's what they're trying to find out now. Hashtag panic steak.
I'm going to say, Bob, they are 100% from Mars without doing much scientific study.
That was a great study. I'm glad you dived right into that during my article.
Without doing much investigation. This sounds like Mars rocks, if I ever did hear about them, which makes you begin to wonder, how what else is kind of floating around out there. But Steve, I don't know if you think it's the same thing as well, but I'm going to go 100% confirmed from Mars.
Hashtag Steve's take.
Yeah, so I don't know if it came from Mars. I mean, I know there's biker mice from Mars, but I don't know.
That's a deep cut. We could save that for Bob After Nostalgia.
But look, I think it's very fascinating because we can learn a lot from these bacterias.
Mm-hmm.
We can literally, by, like you said, by studying the way that they're surviving, we can make inferences about the way life on Mars could be.
Yes.
So in that aspect, it's really kind of cool that we can look at things here on our own planet and that are familiar or familiar-ish to us, and then be able to be like, okay, well, if this works and lives here, then in theory, this should be what we need to look for on another planet if we're trying to find life, because odds are we're not going to find giant multicellular creatures again on Mars. Or not in the way that we know it. But if we start small and we start looking for bacterias and things, that's how we're probably going to find life. So it's actually a really interesting concept.
Excellent. All right. Last news article comes to me from Oddity Central. I got this one myself because I found this girl going viral on the internet, and for probably one of the most interesting hobbies in the world. Now, in my adventures across the country, and I hang out at a lot of graveyards and cemeteries because, well, I guess it makes sense, right? And there are people that have certain hobbies that hang out in these places too. There are people that really enjoy, there's professional photographers that literally exist just to take pictures of, monuments and graveyards and etc. Then there's people who really are super into grave etching, which is they'll get their graphite paper, the little stick of graphite, and then they'll put it over the top and be able to etch out, some of these very old gravestones that are, withering away, but we could still get an inscription out of them. And some people are just into hanging out there because it's quiet and an easy place to take a jog. There's a young lady now by the name of Rosie Grant who has a very unusual hobby of cooking recipes that are etched into people's gravestones in a very interesting way of remembering people's lives. So about a year ago, a young lady by the name of Rosie Grant was studying library science at the University of Maryland and interning at the Archives Congressional Cemetery. At one point, she started a TikTok account and started sharing facts about her studies at the internet and that the foray into the world of cemeteries that led her into her first gravestone cooking recipe. It was first Spritz cookies, featured only 7 ingredients included with no instructions, but Rosie managed to use these ingredients and make something edible, an experience that just left her hungry for more gravestone recipes. Now, real quick, what we're talking about with a gravestone, right? Have you ever seen one ever in your travel?
I have. It's you don't see them often.
I've never seen one,
and you definitely don't see them anymore. But it's every now and then you'll see one.
So what this girl is doing is these people have on, what they want when they pass is they'll put a they'll put a recipe up. They'll have like their name, their etc. And then next to the gravestone, there's going to be another slab of granite, and there'll be a recipe on there. It'll give all the ingredients, and it's up to you to find out what to do. And this young lady has gone and just decided that she was going to start making all of these, and she wants to categorize every recipe from the grave sites that she's been finding. And then she's up to several dozen of them, and she's traveled all over the country. She's up to 13 gravestone recipes from her travels across the country, getting these recipes from gravestones. I've never seen one. Hashtag panic steak.
I've never seen one either, but that's a pretty cool concept there, Bob. And who knew that was actually a really a thing until you mentioned it.
Hashtag Steve steak.
I'm not going to eat anything I find in a graveyard.
It's not.
It's more of a guideline than a rule. But I don't know. Like, look, ingredients change. You're not going to be able to get the same quality of ingredients as they had before.
Yes.
So it's very similar in the way that like people find like historical recipes in journals and diaries. Except these are just on tombstones. But like there's a lot of adjustments you have to make because some of these items no longer exist.
So she put up a picture of the Spritz cookie gravestone, for example, and it's a beautiful monument. Excuse me, guys. The under monument's beautiful, standard stuff you'd see at a cemetery. It's got the prayer hands, it's got some doves, but on top, it's an open book, and the inscription on top of the open book just says Spritz cookies. 1 cup butter or margarine, 3/4 a cup of sugar, 1 teaspoon of vanilla, 1 egg, 2/4 of a cup of flour, 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder, and 1/8 teaspoon of salt. Spritz cookies from a dead person.
Delicious.
10 out of 10. And apparently, she said the Spritz cookies turned out really good. She had to do some research on, what degree do I have to cook these in, and for how long, but I guess they came out really good. Her favorite one so far, though, has been case fudge, which I like fudge, so it sounds great.
Is it vegan? Is it vegan fudge?
2 squares of chocolate, 2 tablespoons of butter, melt on low heat, stir in 1 cup milk, bring to a boil, 3 cups sugar, 1 tablespoon vanilla, pinch of salt, cook to softball stage, pour on the marble slab, cool, and beat and eat. I mean, you got to fit the entire thing on a gravestone. That leaves the question, before we take our quick commercial break. If you could leave a recipe behind, what would your recipe be? Like, what's something you're known for cooking for or baking that you would want to leave behind for somebody to see, assuming you want to be buried?
I would have to go. I make a really good all-cheese lasagna, and so that would probably go on there. That's kind of my signature thing. Either that or the family shepherd pie recipe.
Oh, that's a good one. Count?
I don't really make much, but put the cheese curd recipe somewhere in there. Just cause,
the cheese curd recipe.
Yeah, I just like cheese curds. I don't make them. I just like them.
There's Count, and Count Panics is going to be this really long slab trying to talk about how to cook it.
How do you make a good cheese curd? What's the secret to a good cheese curd?
I think it's legally required that every cemetery in Wisconsin have at least one cheese curd recipe on
I've been to several cemeteries in Wisconsin, and I've never seen a cheese curd recipe.
Just not looking hard enough.
I'm not, apparently, but Count, we make a note of it. We're going to reach out to her and see if we can get her on for an interview, Rosie Grant, from this interview, this story, because I'm interested to talk to her and learn a little bit about the recipes from this. For me, real quick, mine would be garlic bread. My Bob Anderson's famous garlic bread.
I have never had your garlic bread.
I've never had your all cheese lasagna. So
okay, so next time I come in the studio,
wait a second.
I'll bring the the lasagna.
I'll make garlic bread.
You bring garlic
Those
bread.
go hand in hand with each other.
Yeah, then what are you going to do?
I'll get some Big Frank's cheese curds. Well, I have thrown them. But that's like a nice Italian meal you guys got going on right there.
Absolutely.
You can bring the vegetable.
I'll make the wine.
That's even better. It's Bob after dark. After dark.
After dark.
Just drinking the wine. The homemade.
Careful. And the Count Panic's homemade wine.
Panic's making the toilet wine.
Oh, that'll mess me. I count it right now. All right, folks, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back. For our live fans, stick around. And for our podcast fans, you're about to be hearing words from a podcast that you should be listening to. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Ghostly.
Pat, what are you doing?
What? I want people to know that we're a podcast that takes a deep dive into some of the scariest ghost stories.
But we don't do the creepy voices or weird sound effects. We debate the ghost stories. And aren't you supposed to be the skeptic?
I am, but they'll find that out once they listen.
Look, all you have to do is tell them to listen to Ghostly, and that our listeners get to decide which stories are real.
And which stories are just old folklore.
Exactly.
Download Ghostly wherever you find great podcasts.
Oh, jeez.
And we're back. Hey, Count.
Hey, Bob.
What'd you do during break?
I made several bottles of wine.
Several bottles?
During the break. Can't wait for you to do some taste testing all night long.
Can you take a guess what my favorite kind of wine is?
You're just a simple white wine guy there, Bob.
No. You? Can you take it? Hey, you might know this. What's my favorite type of wine?
I don't know this.
Cab.
Is it?
Yeah, love me a good cab.
Wait a second.
I drank 3 bottles of that during the break. It's funny. We're gonna have a good back half of the show.
That's great. I actually took up competitive tic-tac-toe during break.
Wow.
Yeah, you know the strategy of going in the corner?
Yeah.
It's garbage.
Garbage?
Don't do it. It's always
Okay.
about the sides.
I always heard the middle.
Competitive tic-tac-toe, everybody. Yeah, it's the new Bob After Dark hobby. All right, so
Wait.
yes,
I always thought you were a box wine guy, honestly.
you could get box cab house
I guess so,
boxed
yeah.
wine, sir.
Slap the bag.
I almost said the F word because it's a brand of boxed wine, but they could sponsor the show if they want me to name drop them because I can do that. Boxed wine company that begins with an F, you know who you are. I probably kept you all in business when I was in college because it's all I ever took to parties was boxed wine because you could get a box for like $13 and that was enough for many a person. So listen, boxed wine.
Or one person. Or one really large
I
person.
have listen. I'm a big boy who can hold my liquor, and I've never been able to finish a whole box of wine to myself. That's a lot. It's more than a bottle. That's several of highly charged cheap wine.
I mean, I can go through 3 bottles of wine.
Yeah, but have you ever finished an entire bag of a boxed wine? Because it's bad wine.
I've never done it because I have standards, Bob.
That's what I'm not saying it's bad wine. So listen, F word, not the F word, but the F brand, the F branded wine company. You could sponsor Bob After Dark.
FCC's about to bust in this room.
They're about to kick in the door.
I hear their helicopters right now.
I think they have better things to do than to be trolling the AM/FM radio dial looking for your local paranormal show, which somehow we started talking about wine and cheese. Man, this is going to be a good night. Dad would have been excited.
There you go.
All right, so the entire month of November, we are talking about paranormal investigators and what they do. And the reason why I have you on here, other than as an easy guest that I can interview blindfolded, is
I'm available last minute.
You're available last minute. To be fair, folks, Steve was my first choice of a guest of somebody that I can trust to come on here and talk about their experiences. Because fun fact, paranormal investigators, there's some of them that are easy to talk to and then others not so much. And Steve is one of the people that are easy to talk to. That's why we have him on the show.
Good, I have you fooled.
Oh, God, it's going to be a rough interview.
It's the 3 bottles of wine, Bob. I don't know what to tell you.
I thought that would loosen you up.
3 bottles is my limit, Bob. We're gonna have fun now.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about your first taste in the world of the paranormal. Not investigative, but what piqued your interest maybe as a kid, teenager, adult, whatever it might have been. That what got you started in the world of like your interest in, we'll move into the investigation.
Yeah. So it's weird. So I like the movie Ghostbusters.
Oh, I've never seen it.
Yeah, really?
Yeah.
You should check it out.
It's with the gorilla, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's with the gorilla.
And the vaudeville actors.
And then like there's some ladies and
yeah,
yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
So like I was interested in Ghostbusters, but then like I somehow got interested in like real ghosts, like in actual like ghosts and like paranormal and like UFOs and Bigfoot and Loch Ness Monster and all that crazy stuff. Um, so when I was in school, I would always check out the books from the library, like the same 3 books that on ghosts and paranormal and all that. And I memorized those books.
What was your first paranormal book? 'Cause I think everybody remembers their first ghost book they read.
Yeah, it was the Big Book of Ghosts.
Okay.
It was like a soft cover, like a Time Life published book. It was like one. It was like it had all illustrations, and then there were like 3 pages where there were actual like photos of ghosts. With like the Gray Lady was in it and stuff like that, like famous ghost pictures. And it freaked me out, but at the same time I was like, this is absolutely fascinating. Like, what if like this is something that's real, right? So there's photos here, and like this was before like Photoshop got super crazy. So these are things where it's like, okay, like these are probably very verifiable things. And it just kind of just kept snowballing and getting bigger and bigger, this love and interest of the paranormal and of ghosts in particular. And I always was like, I really want to I want to see a ghost. Like,
Sure.
I want to see this. I want a picture of a ghost. I want to experience something. I want to hear something. I want to smell something. Like, I need to see this now. And it eventually led me down this path where I became a ghost hunter.
Yeah. So what was it about Ghostbusters to the actual paranormal? Ghostbusters, by the way, folks, is actually deep-rooted in real lore. Dan Aykroyd, the guy, who made Ghostbusters,
He's
one of
the man
behind it. Dan Aykroyd has a deep background in the paranormal. Like, his family were occultists and paranormal investigators before the term was even coined. These guys
Big
were
fans of Bob After Dark.
Oh, actually, yeah. Dan Aykroyd knew the name. Fun fact. Now, Dan, I've been waiting for you for a few years now. I've been waiting. You have no excuse now. Afterlife's over. So, you've seen my emails. I know you have. But anyway, so what was it from Ghostbusters to like diving in? Is it like you're watching, you're like, oh, I wonder if there's something to this, because you're at an impressionable age, I'm sure, when you got done seeing the movie. So what was the moment that was like, or what was the thing that you saw, or that you're like, I wonder about this? What was it?
So like, I mean, with Ghostbusters, it's obviously like there's something super enthralling about seeing the particle thrower go off for the first time, and you see that orange and blue beam just kind of like wrap up a ghost. But on a different level, like, they're tracking these ghosts with like the ecto goggles. They're tracking them with the PKE meter, and then there's some real science behind those things. So then it's like, well, I wonder if like this could kind of be real. Like, wouldn't it be neat to like track a ghost? Wouldn't it be neat to like put on like some weird goggles and then be able to like easily track a ghost in a room, and I think that's really what it was for me.
Did you have a lot of interest in science as a kid?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I was a science nerd. I was a history nerd. I was that weird kid that knew everything about like ancient Egypt and the Titanic and like all the
Steve
the
is still that
stuff.
weird kid.
Folks. I'm still that weird kid. That hasn't changed.
That hasn't changed.
I'll still talk your ears off about all that, but like, it was just something about like, it was the fact that it very well could all be fake.
Sure.
All of it could just not exist, but at the same time, all of it could be very real. And so there was this weird pull to it where it's like, yeah, this is a science fiction fantasy comedy movie, but in reality, like, there's no proof that says that you can't have a ghost in a hotel that just runs roughshod.
Sure.
And that was really kind of it for me.
So when was the first time that you were able to get a chance to dive into it, right? Or when was the first time you realized that, oh my goodness, there's people that actually like host these tours, or a group that does investigations, or maybe you went off on your own? I could tell you my first experience like going out investigating was Reeder Road.
Really?
Count Panic knows that one.
Yeah.
Reeder Road, I was out there with flashlights and stuff when I was 16 hunting ghosts. So like where was the first like thing for that, or the first idea that you could do this type of thing?
So, to backtrack a little bit.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
To kind of build on more of like making me believe that something like this was possible.
Sure.
Like we've talked about it before. I had a UFO encounter at 5.
Yeah.
So I was like, there's definitely more to this universe and world than what mainstream science understands and knows.
Sure.
So then it was like, okay, so then now ghosts can be very real. Bigfoot can be all this stuff can be very real. So the first time I actually like invested, so I became aware of like ghost tours. Like my dad and mom were always very like supportive of this. Like they thought it was kind of weird.
You should have seen my parents when I told them, I'm like, I want to be a paranormal investigator for a living, guys. You're going to be 30 soon. You should.
This was last year. But like, no, they were like, okay, that's odd, but like, he's inquisitive and he's curious and he wants to learn. So let's keep this up. And so it wasn't until I was 16 that I actually went on my first like investigation.
We have photos of that.
We do.
Count, you want to start putting those up on Jet
Right
TV, and then we'll post those up in the Children of the Night page too.
Okay, so this was actually the second time I ever did anything. This was the first time I ever did anything on my own.
Where are you at?
I was in high school at the time. We had an overnight retreat to the Stronghold Castle in northwestern Illinois. I don't remember the exact town, but it's this old like castle, and they rented it out for like a leadership like building exercise overnight deal.
Sure.
But the rumor going into it was that this building was haunted. And so me having had one pseudo investigation on my under my belt, I ended up bringing along some very rudimentary things. I had a flashlight. I had a UV light.
Yeah.
I had a tape recorder, and I had a notepad and pen, and that was it. And so I had a very like prominent goal in my head of I'm gonna find something. Like
and you were not on this trip for a paranormal investigation. You
No.
were there, so you were just doing this.
I was doing this on my
yeah,
own.
that's amazing.
I was the weird sophomore that was like, "Hey guys, yeah, I'll do all the team building stuff. But also I'm gonna look for ghosts. So if any of you guys want to join me, you're welcome to. Otherwise, I'm just gonna do this."
Well, we would have been best friends. I would have been right there with you, been like, "Oh, tell me more." Yeah.
So the crazy thing, this photo was in the main room of this building, and it was a large, it was maybe like 50 yards long, it had to have been like a 25-foot vaulted ceiling. It was almost like a cathedral, and there were 2 couches just kind of opposite each other. It was just a big hangout room. I was sitting on the couch, and it got cold where I was sitting, to the point where I could physically go like be here, put my hand in front of me, and it be cold, and move my hand off the couch, and it be warm, and move my hand over the other cushion, and it be warm. I got up and was able to verify this, I called a couple other students over and was like, hey, sounds weird. Put your hand here. Now move your hand. Like, do you notice a temperature difference? And they're like, yeah, it's a little bit colder here. Okay. So now I've got other people that have verified this. I had a disposable camera with me that I was supposed to be using for like the team building stuff. And I was like, nope, gonna look for ghosts. And I turned and I took 3 photos of this couch. First photo, there was nothing in it. Third photo, there was nothing in it. Second photo is this orb.
By the way, for our audio fans, Steve is with the photo we're looking at right now is a couch straight out of Kenan and Kel. It's orange.
It's a 1970s like orange couch. It's very worn.
Yes. Do you enjoy my Kenan and Kel reference?
I do.
Thank
yeah.
you, yes.
It's like the Snick couch.
Yes.
And behind it there's like a food setup where we had like all our snacks and stuff, and then on the cushion on the far cushion is my notepad. The cushion next to it is my tape recorder and the UV light, and then far other cushion is like a notebook from somebody else. But at the top of this couch, there is a large orb. Mm-hmm. And Bob, anyone that's listened and heard me on the show before knows my opinions on orbs.
Yes.
And that 99% of all orbs are garbage.
Yes.
Which is causes debate and
we'll get to why you think
people
that
up
too,
in arms. But this is the only photo I have ever taken where I am 100% sure that this is a legitimate orb and not dust or water. And the reason for this is if you look at the photo, there is no other anomalies in this picture. There are no other circles. There's no other places that could be like dust or water or bugs. There's nothing else in this photo aside from this one singular orb. This orb is also perfectly circular, and it also appears to be emitting its own light. It is not reflecting anything. You can barely see through it. It just appears to be radiating light, which combined with the fact that there was a verified cold spot, and the previous and the following photos, which were taken 1, 2, 3, had nothing. And this is the only thing with something in it. It leads me to believe that this was probably actually verifiable orb.
We have a caller on the line. Steve, let's put a pin in that. The
Yeah.
caller, you're on the air.
Hey, Bob, Steve, how you guys doing?
Hey, John,
Hey,
you're
how you
calling
doing?
in late.
Yeah, well, we 10 o'clock. I don't know, Bob after dark.
Fair. You got me there, John.
Right, Steve?
Yeah, it is after dark.
We could drink a few bottles of wine too, and
Now you're talking.
My man.
But hey, nice to see you back again and hear you, Steve.
Thank you so
Hey,
much.
listening to what you're saying, all your stories right now, and knowing your interest and how you got involved in the paranormal, I'm going to leave it right there, and I'm going to ask Bob.
Yes.
Now, yesterday, Bob, you were very interesting and on the Region Rush Hour with that paranormal Halloween show you guys had
Yeah.
there. But, you always nail it with something. And what stood out to me is, I forgot the question that was asked, but you brought up about 5 points about what it needs to take to be a paranormal investigator or a believer.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes,
but-
the 5 stages of belief.
Yeah,
Or
can you
skepticism.
name them again?
Yep. So you have the zealous, overexcited believer. Every knock on the wall, every creak in the floor is a ghost or an anomaly. Then you have your skeptical believer. Your skeptical believer is, I hear the creak, I'm excited about the creak. Let's go see what the creak is, and I'm really hoping it's a ghost or anomaly. Then you have your neutral party, which is the agnostic believer, as I call them. I want to believe something's here, but I'm kind of don't believe something's here, the very middle ground. Then you have skeptic light, which is Creak in the floor, probably nothing, but I want to investigate it anyway. It's kind of strange that this room's a little cold, but we can explain it maybe. And then you have the hardcore skeptic, or the skeptic heavy, unfiltered, as I say. Nothing in this room is, any anomaly that we experience can and will be explained. No matter how strange it is, no matter how much evidence you bring to me, I will explain it away. By the way, this isn't an exact science. This is the Bob Anderson 5 scales of belief.
No, I thought that was really amazing when you said that. Now, going back to you, Steve.
Yes.
Can you put yourself in one of those 5 categories when you first got started, or even as you continue to be, involved in the paranormal, of one of those categories, or more than one of those categories, or
yeah? So I consider myself to be a skeptical believer, where I'm coming in and I'm told a place is haunted. I'm coming in to try and find proof that it's haunted, but I am going to look for every other possible rational explanation first, before I say, okay, this place is haunted. For example, I did an investigation at a private home one time. They were reporting seeing their child was reporting seeing a shadow in the one corner of their room, on a nightly basis, with red eyes, and he was terrified. We go into the house, we go into that corner. There is a very high EMF signature in that corner. Now, a standard base EMF signature would be like 0.1, 0.2 milligauss.
For all of you that don't study, this is the electromagnetic phenomena.
Yes, it's a measurement of electromagneticity.
Yes, just real quick.
Yeah.
Steve got excited. I saw the science gears turning, but we have to slow it down just a pinch sometimes.
Yes.
Steve.
No, I appreciate that. Yes. So a milligauss is a measurement of electromagneticity.
Okay.
And so in a regular room, you would have 0.1 to 0.2 milligauss. It's a very low level. It's a very safe level. In this corner, we were getting readings of 8, 9, 10 milligauss, which is extraordinarily high, and arguably extremely unsafe levels that we're picking up. The reason that it can be unsafe is because people can gain sensitivity to electromagnetic fields, and so it can cause everything from hallucinations to paranoia. Sometimes there are physical reactions, such as rashes. So I was like, okay, well, this is in the same corner. Let's see what's on the other side of the wall. So we went into the other room, which was opposite, and there was a fish tank in that room. And the water filter on the fish tank, when we put the meter to it, was actually like flatlining the meter, which meant it was over 100 milligauss, which is a huge problem. Even the electrical conduits in your house, they're shielded, so you'll have higher levels, but you will never have anything that high. So we literally like, okay, well, unplug it, throw that away, get a new one, and see if that doesn't help. And sure enough, that the child stopped seeing things. So the assumption is that he was having hallucinations because of this high, extremely high EMF field that was basically an EMF pump. So that's kind of where I sit. So like if I can find a solution, then that's the solution. If I can't find a rational solution, then that becomes evidence to a potential haunting, and then I document that, and we put in a file, and we try and layer our evidence with as many different types of different things, such as EMF levels, temperature spikes or drops, thermal imaging hits, things like that, and then we can have a case for a haunting potentially.
Okay, so you more or less would have to have, you personally would have to have some staunch evidence, or really some
Some sort of real reason to go, to take your equipment in a place and investigate it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, Yeah.
in other words, what you personally are not going to go by hearsay. You're more or less going to study before you go in.
So
Take clues and facts, or like the FBI would do an investigation. I mean, they were not, they would have a plan, and then then go in and make a decision, or that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. So a lot of the times we would get called in to locations, whether they were places of business or private residences. 9 times out of 10, they were private residences, which is why a lot of our evidence has remained classified, just due to privacy reasons. But then we go in and we just try and solve their problem. We would try and solve and get to the bottom of what's happening. If we can't figure it out, then we can't figure it out, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with going into a place and just being like, okay, we had some weird things happen and we can't solve it. That's the whole point of the investigation. So
Right. No, that I understand. Hey, very interesting. I appreciate that.
yeah, of course.
Thanks, John, for calling
You
in.
too, Bob. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good questions. John always has
I really
the best
was.
questions. Folks, you guys could always call in and be like John, 219-845-1100. You could put Count Panic to work.
Yeah.
They can answer some phones.
We got a couple pictures too still.
We got a couple more pictures. Let's get through these
Yeah.
because we got to get through a couple more spots
Yep.
before we're out.
Yep, absolutely.
So this next one, we're looking at a mirror.
Yes. So this is. Can you actually put up the other photo? Is that possible?
Sure. Yeah. Let's see.
To set this up. So this was on this. This is my very first investigation. It was in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Yes. I was excited. I was hoping you were going to tell this story.
This is in Albuquerque, New Mexico, with the Southwest Ghost Hunters Association. I went on a ghost tour of Old Town Albuquerque, which is an area that is set off to the side that is very much just the way it was back in the old days.
Yeah.
But now it's all kitschy little shops and markets and things like that, and restaurants, but very haunted. So my family and I we'd go out there all the time on vacation, and we decided one day we would do this ghost tour because we had heard a lot about it. And I'm a 16-year-old kid who's like, who knows like everything about ghosts. And we did this tour, and the guy in this photo, his name was Buck McCombs.
Okay.
I remember that.
It's a good investigator.
It's a good name.
I like that.
It's a cowboy
It's
name.
a good investigator name.
And he gave this whole tour, and I was like 2 steps behind this guy the entire time, like asking question after question. And during this, there's this one restaurant called the Maria Teresa restaurant, or it was called that. It's now changed owners. And he was like, well, we're doing an investigation here tonight. We'll actually get to go in, and you can see how it's set up. And my mind was blown. I was like, oh my gosh, I actually get to see like inside a real like ghost hunt. And so like it was just a quick walkthrough just to be like, this is how it's set up and this is what's going on here. And then we continued on with the tour. Tour ends, and I'm standing there and I'm talking this guy's ear off. I'm asking him question after question after question, and he eventually is like, would you and your family like to come along on this investigation? And I lit up.
Yeah.
And I remember turning to my parents. I was like, oh my God, please, can we do this? And my dad was like, actually, this sounds really cool. And my mom was like, sounds kind of scary, but you know what? He'll probably never get another chance to do this. Let's do it. This will be a great experience for all of us. So they bring us back to this restaurant after everyone else on the tour is gone. And he brings us in and he's like, hey, these three are going to come along on the investigation. Like, he knows everything about ghosts and the paranormal. Like, he's on it. Like, I want to teach him how to use the equipment and how to do everything. So this team, in this photo, he's actually teaching me how to use an EMF meter. He's teaching me the proper way to hold it, the proper way to take the measurements, the proper way to sweep.
I got to ask, was it the penny jam method or was it the press and it stuck method?
It was this was back in the day.
So shove the penny in
the penny jam.
Yeah, shove the penny in.
This was the penny jam. But I believe this one was actually I think this was the Gauss Master.
Okay, yeah.
So it's still an old school one anyway.
Yeah.
But he was teaching me how to do that. They taught me how to do EVP sessions properly. Everything that I know today is based off of the things that these guys taught me that night. And I have carried that forward. And I've never had a chance to really talk to them since.
Are they still a team?
I don't know. And I really need to kind of find out, just to thank them. But they did a lot for me to kind of get me to the investigator I am. So.
Also, you had a keen fashion sense with that hat.
Hey man, it's the Southwest.
I'm a fan of the hat.
I wanted a cowboy hat, and I was rocking that cowboy hat. I'm not gonna lie. You won't see me in a cowboy hat anymore. But like at the time, 16-year-old me thought I was the coolest person in the world rocking a cowboy hat
and doing a paranormal investigation. That's just with a guy named Buck.
With a guy named
Buck,
Buck.
Like you're ready to.
Buck, the lead investigator was his name was Cody. Like these were like these are all cowboy names, and I'm like, this is so cool.
So you geek out. You come back to Chicago.
Yeah. During this investigation, there's a So there's a report about one of the mirrors.
Yeah.
Where a family was eating dinner, and their waiter walks away, and then the waiter comes back, and they're all laughing and like pointing and smiling, and the waiter is like, oh, what's going on? And they're like, this is the greatest trick we've ever seen. I don't know how you did it, but this is fantastic. He's like, oh yeah, what's going on here? And they point to this mirror, and they're like, there's the guy sitting in the mirror, and there's a guy sitting in the mirror, sitting with them, and the waiter's like, oh, that's a great trick. It wasn't a trick mirror. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take a couple photos of this mirror, and we'll see what happens. So take a couple photos with flash at an angle so I don't get the flash reflection.
Yeah.
Very much like the orb photo. First photo, nothing. Second photo, nothing. Middle photo. So for those of you listening, this is a photo of a mirror on a wall. There's two lights on the wall next to it, higher up, and a table in front of it. And then in the lower right corner of the mirror, there is, and it's hard to see from this angle. It'll be thrown up on the page.
Yeah.
So you can zoom in. There's what appears to be a male face, looking out of the mirror, and he appears to have a bolo tie, and a mustache, a very kind of old-fashioned looking cowboyish man. Not in any of the other photos, but this is the same mirror where they reported seeing that exact kind of figure in the mirror. Happened to get a photo of this.
That's so cool. So you get geeked. You are excited.
Yeah.
You're replaying this, some odd amount of years later.
Yeah.
And you are still as excited as I'm sure you were back when you were 15.
Oh yeah, it's so cool because like these are memories, right?
Yeah.
These are key moments in the life of an investigator. This is my first investigation. This is my first evidence. This is my first solo investigation. This is my first solo evidence. Like
Yeah.
these are all like waypoints in a career of an investigator.
So you get back to Chicago.
Yes.
What is a 15, 16-year-old Steve Michaels to do? Sorry.
You're breaking kayfabe here, brother.
Sorry, brother. What is a teenage Steve to do when he comes back home with this brain full of paranormal knowledge and is so excited to, be at it? Because you're wearing this T-shirt that I'm assuming leads to a great story next. So
I had to dig this one out. Bust out the old team shirt.
So tell me about what was after that. How'd you get involved with your own team?
So for a long while there, I was just kind of like trying to like figure out, okay, well, how can I do things still? And like, I would like go to Bachelor's Grove and like wander there and like do small things on my own. And happened to find a class in Northwest Indiana run by this investigator by the name of Cheryl Wright. That was an official AGS class.
Yeah.
And
Can we explain what the AGS is?
Yes. It's the American Ghost Society.
Yes.
It's a really big network of ghost hunters, and investigators and teams. It's led by Troy Taylor, who's a very famous author, paranormal author. And there just happened to be a class by one of their licensed investigators. So I did this class. At this point I was 20. Did this class, and there were about 5 or 6 of us in this class, just kind of like the most like motley crew, ragtag group of like people that you can imagine. Just like none of us had anything in common except for the fact like we wanted to like learn about ghost hunting. And once we finished this class, we all ended up forming a team with Cher, the leader of the class.
Yeah.
And we created this group called Paranormal Sciences, which is a science-based group of skeptical believers who go into locations to try and find the science first, and then, like I said, if you can't figure it out, then it's evidence. And we did this for about a year and a half. And then things, there's falling outs and things happen.
Oh, sure, yeah. Life gets in the way.
Right. And a bunch of us from the team decided that we would split off. And we ate at a CC's Pizza.
Yeah. That mac and cheese pizza, man.
And I'll never forget this. This was like a CC's Pizza in like Valpo.
Yeah.
In Portage.
Portage, right
in
off
Portage. Yep. And we were just talking like, okay, well, we kind of need to split from this. Like the things aren't working the way we want it to. Okay, let's create our own team. And well, what do we call it? And like what, how are we going to get this started? And we came up with MPRS, the Midwest Paranormal Research Society.
That is such a cool name.
It was such a cool name.
Yeah.
And we basically did the same kind of thing that we were doing with Paranormal Sciences, except now we had control on our own as to where we went, what investigations we did, how they were handled, who was handling what. And throughout this whole time, like I'm very technical-based, technology-based kind of person. So I had been a part of the tech team before.
What is the tech team?
So the tech team is in charge of all of the equipment that is brought to an investigation. We make sure that the equipment is working properly and functioning properly. We're making sure that batteries are working. We're making sure we have extra batteries. We're making sure that cameras are set up in the right locations that we need. We're making sure that recorders are set up in proper locations and documented where all these things are. And then afterwards, we have the lovely task of going through the hours and hours of camera footage and audio recordings to try and find EVPs, video anomalies, photographic anomalies, things like that. With MPRS, I was one of the tech team guys. So I became very well versed in camera angles, very well versed in analyzing photos, analyzing videos. I became very well versed in analyzing audio anomalies as well, whether they're sounds on recordings or if they're potential EVPs. I would then have to okay, well, this was in this room, but we have a camera in this room, so let me try and coordinate between the camera and see if anything happened around this time on the camera that this could have been. And it was a fun job. It was a tedious job. There's a lot of analysis, a lot of time, a lot of effort that goes into it, because sometimes it's 8 hours of audio and you're just sitting through just dead air for 8 hours.
Yeah.
And there's really nothing you can do about it. But I loved it. I absolutely loved it, and we got to do and see some really cool things. We got to debunk a couple things. We had some really weird cases where there were issues where things were seen on baby monitors, but we were able to find out that for some reason this was a house on the west side, the west suburbs of Chicago. They were we're seeing a figure on our baby monitor. We're like, okay, well, we'll investigate because it's a baby's room.
Sure.
And it happened while we were there that we saw a figure on the monitor. But in investigating it and trying to track it down, it ends up there was a weird crossover with a security camera in the house next door that it just so happened to be on the same frequency, and it ghosted into the screen of the baby monitor.
Wow. What are the odds of that? That's
right.
Insane. Yeah.
It's very odd. It's a very rare thing. But we literally were watching the baby monitor and we saw a ghosted figure walk through, and we're like, that's weird. But then they walked back, and it was a very casual okay, go into look in the closet kind of thing.
Sure.
And we're like, go over to the neighbor and ask if they have security cameras in their house or a baby.
What led you to that conclusion to ask that question?
It was the movement of the person.
Okay.
So with a lot of ghosts,
yeah,
their movement is not, there's no purpose to the movement. It's very much it's on autopilot.
Yeah.
They're kind of just, it's not like I'm walking up to you to go shake your hand. It's just this very absent, lackadaisical kind of okay, I'm walking straight. This was one of those where it was a walk. It was okay, and then immediately saw a walk back and turn and walk, but it was with purpose.
Sure.
And I was like, that looks very human. And it was you know what? Shot in the dark. Let's see if there's a camera at any of these other houses, and there just so happened to be, and that's what it was. Because when we saw the guy, it's that basically matches the shape of the person.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. But that's why you got to do the research, and you can't just be yep, that saw it on the camera. That's a ghost. Okay, well, what if there's digital interference.
Sure. So, in your time because we have one cool thing that Count Panic put together for you.
Oh,
Being
God.
a tech guy, we're excited for it. So, your time with the Midwest Paranormal Research Society.
Yes.
You don't have to go into full details because we are running somewhat on time, but what was the favorite place you ever investigated? It could be a residence, or if you guys did something cool like a public joint.
Yeah, I loved the Bartonville Asylum down in Bartonville, Illinois. That was a fun place. We didn't have a ton of activity outside of like the Massive Shadow, which I've talked about on here before. But for me, the reason I enjoyed it was, one, it was a peaceful location because it's in the middle of nowhere. Like, it's in the middle of the woods.
Yeah.
So, like, there's no cars. There's no like, you're just hearing like nature. But it also became very much a technical challenge for me because I had to figure out how I wanted to wire up 4 different cameras amongst 5 floors, including a basement. And so figuring out how I wanted to like run wires and how to maximize the efficiency of the cables that we had, because that's a finite resource. And just be like, okay, well, I've got 200, 300 feet of cable. I got about 150 feet per each one. Okay, well, I can shorten up the range on this one, and then I can use the extra 100 feet on this other cable.
Sure.
So, from a technical aspect, I had the most fun on that one. And it's got to be that one.
That's cool. So, you being the technical guy.
Yes.
Count Panic has compiled a list. I'll let him tell you.
Well, there's a couple here because there's some we were cussing in, so I don't know if we can really play that one. But there's a couple EVPs here from the interwebs that we could get to right now. This one from liveabout.com. This is a hotel in Syracuse, New York, investigation done by the Central New York Ghost Hunters. Hotel to remain nameless due to being confidential, I guess. But they did an EVP recording on this one night when they were investigating, where you could hear, they claim they hear 3 females talking. You could hear one person say, "Hello, baby." Then the conversation continues. But then you could also hear what sounds like maybe a struggle or an attack. Now, again, keep in mind that this might be hard to hear for some, so let's play it. I'll set the spooky background on the Jed TV right there, and let me hit this and see how fires up here again. Abrupt stop right there.
Someone needs to turn off their metronome.
There's a lot going on. Let me take that one out right there. A lot going on there. There's also like ticking, which they claim there was no clock in the room or anything like that, which is kind of strange.
Yeah, I was going to say
a lot going on there.
That's the ticking was
sounds
very,
like a metronome.
Yeah, it sounds like a metronome or like a clock just going. There definitely sounds to be like I heard what could be heard as "Hi, baby," but it's very hard to make out. This would not be a piece of evidence I would bring to a client unless I had additional evidence in that room, because this is something where you can write it off. A skeptic can write this off as, well, that could be noise from outside. That can be this. That could be that.
Sure.
If I had an EMF reading with it, if I had a temperature reading with it, that was anomalous, then I'd be like, okay, like this sounds a little bit off, but like we have something else to go with it. This would be one of those pieces that we would hold on to, and like be like, if we have a bunch of other evidence, be like, okay, this is our good evidence, and then this is what we would consider secondary or tertiary evidence, where it's there, but it's subjective and could be whatever you really put to it.
Now, so we'll do one more here. This is from Ranker.com, and there's a bunch of them here. Again, we could only go play as kind of radio friendly, so to speak. Now, this one I think is pretty neat, very clear. Hence why I think it's number one. But I'll give you the backstory. During a 2011 investigation, the Cafe Sport in Swinton, Greater Manchester, Project Reveal recorded EVP that sounded like it was beckoning them to come down to the basement. That's already creepy enough, but according to the group Skeptic, he was standing next to the recorder and didn't hear anything while they were recording. So again, let's hear from the Cafe Sport here in Swinton. I'm one down here is what it was kind of translating to. That one I thought came in pretty clear.
Yeah, no, you can definitely.
Welcome to the neighborhood.
Take
Yeah,
that out there. That is not the EVP.
Not the EVP.
No.
I was gonna say, is there someone at the door?
Oh.
No, you can definitely clearly hear that. That's what I would consider like a Class A EVP.
Yeah.
Where there's no question what's being said. You can hear it clear as day, and it's very distinct. That's really good evidence.
Yeah, and that's why it was number one, I think, in the list. I mean, that was spooky. I mean, you listen back on that, there's no doubt that's somebody talking to you. A lot of those EVPs, like the first one, a lot that gets muffled, I feel like, but that one was really clear.
I will say, for me, listening to that, yeah, that's clear as day. That's eerie. But I need a video to go with it to show that there's not somebody there.
I would agree.
Yep. For me, my belief system, I'm a believer, but I'm not the overzealous type. I'm like, I want to believe that, but man, I need to make sure there's not somebody, because that is so close to the microphone.
It really is. And that would be my main concern.
Yeah.
Going into it is, okay, that's so clear. That's very, it's very blatant what is being said. So let me, like, do you have like video footage? Do you have camera proof? Like, do you have something, anything you could show me at that time that's showing me that there isn't anyone there? Can I tell you what one of my favorite EVPs I've ever heard is?
Yes.
It was actually from the Southwest Ghost Hunters Association. In Old Town Albuquerque, there used to be an old cemetery that got paved over and built over. And they were doing an investigation of like this whole square area. And in it, they're asking, why are you here? And there is a clear as day response that says, expletive, we's dead. And it is the funniest thing. Like, I was like, okay, like that's straight up an answer.
I mean, you got what you asked.
Yeah. Why are we here? Okay. Yeah. You're right. You're dead. But sometimes it's fascinating just because like EVPs can be so varied. It can be something that's very muffled, like the first one. It can be something that's a little bit more eerie, like that second one, or it can be something that's clear and has a little bit of like humor and it like more sharp and to the point, like the one that I told you about. So EVPs are fun.
I will say I want to bring this up because I have two pieces of evidence in my life that are my absolute two favorites. One of which I was with Count Panic there for, and my other one was with you. We were at the Crown Point Jail. I wanted to point this one out just as a brief story before we call it a night. Mm-hmm. Remember that time we were in the Juvenile Hall Detention Center at the Crown Point Jail, and they still have the remnants of the giant, heavy steel bunk beds that are not being moved by me or you without, like, serious...
Yeah. You have to pull them.
Yeah, like very hard to get
Yeah.
them moved. And we were in there, and Steve's like, we were trying to get some kind of activity in the juvenile hall center, and then Steve's like, you guys just can't. He was doing some parapsychology to antagonize or try to get a response. And
Can I explain that really quick? Do we
Yeah.
have time?
if we could get it done quick,
Yeah,
yes.
we can get done quick. So, a lot of times you don't really want to antagonize the spirits because you don't know what they're potentially capable of. They could be good, they could be bad. You don't want to mess with that.
Mhm.
If sometimes you have drastic measures, and that's provoking the spirit, where you're basically being like, okay, do you know what? I don't think you can do this. I don't think you're real. I don't think you're here. You're not powerful enough to do anything for me. And you just kind of prod the ghost into trying to do something for you.
Yeah.
A lot of times it will work. And this was one of the times it actually worked.
Steve's like, we were in there for a good 20, 25 minutes. And Steve, I was like, man, we're not getting anything. I mean, paranormal investigation, guys, I say it all the time. It is not as glamorous as you see on TV. You could be in a room for 9, 10 hours and nothing's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But Steve's like, I bet you guys are punks. You can't do anything. And clear as day, man, that bed scooted. This giant steel hulking bunk bed frame scooted. And Steve's like, he just flamed your hands down. He said, point proven. I think it's time for us to leave.
Yeah, it was very clear. It was the sound of metal scraping across the floor, and it was one of those where we're like, okay, well now we got to make sure that that's the sound, and we pulled one of the beds and it made the same sound, and we're like, okay, do you know what? We've been up here for 30 minutes at this point. We haven't heard anything. It's been silent. I bet you can't. You're not even here. You're not that powerful. And then you hear that. It's like, okay, well, we got the reaction and we got the response we wanted out of it.
So these days, as we wrap up, you are not investigating with a group per se. Your group is more or less enjoying retirement. Yeah,
we have disbanded. We've all gone our separate ways. You know, I mean, life happens.
Yeah. Families
happen. Careers happen. So MPRS is now a defunct team. But I'll do small investigations every now and then. I'll join.
Specifically with me. Yeah.
I will join. I'll get an occasional text or call from Bob being like, "Oh, hey there, Steve. What are you doing next Sunday?" I'm like, I don't, like, maybe working. Oh, if you aren't, do you want to come to the schoolhouse with me? Yeah, I mean, I can make that happen.
Yeah.
So like I'll do freelance stuff still because I still love it. I've got all my equipment and it's kind of like old hand to pick it up.
Yeah. Sorry, that noise was eerie. Did you hear that? Never mind. Anyway.
Ooh.
You didn't hear that? It sounded like a trumpet. I'm not joking, guys. I'm not crazy. Anyway. So, since you don't have a paranormal team...
Fun.
That was me on that one there, I think.
Thanks, Kyle. Bob made me had a heart attack.
Well, that's the thing.
All right, since you don't have a paranormal team to plug, why don't you plug your other stuff?
I appreciate that, Bob.
I did really well last week, but I think you could do it better.
I appreciate you did a really solid job.
Yes.
It's not like you haven't heard it for 3 years straight. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Chicago Bear Hug. You can get my merch, prowrestlingtees.com/Chicago Bear Hug. You can catch me on OVW Wrestling. That's every Thursday. We've got 2 hours live on Fight TV, FITE. We're the only wrestling program that has a live weekly show on Fight. So check us out. And if you have evidence, if you have a photo, please no orbs. I'm gonna break your heart.
You send them right to me.
I'm gonna break all your hearts.
Dust,
water. That's a bug. That's dust. But if you have photos, videos, questions, send them to the Bob After Dark page. I'm the guy that ends up looking at all that stuff anyway.
Yep.
And I'll be happy to
keep you on the pseudo payroll. Fun fact: when you send evidence my way, Steve looks at it.
Yeah, that's me. That's me. Bob sends me a text and be like, "Hey, can you look at this for a second?" And I'll be like,
"Dust."
Yeah, that's a bug because you can see the wing, and it's in motion. That's why it looks so weird. Yeah, we do this all the time. But,
what is your closing proverb for the night, Count Panic?
Bob, no proverb, but I just want to know, people know I'm taking orders for the wine. So get at me, and we'll get you a bottle of wine here soon enough. Maybe a box of it if you're lucky. But everybody continue to have a great thinning of the veil as the days continue on here, and then it gets thick again, then it'll get thin again for Yule. And again, following up the Halloween episode, action-packed. Steve, great to have you on as always.
Steve, thanks for coming on and sharing your secret identity story. That's a lot of fun. I even name-dropped your last name.
You did.
Good luck spelling that, guys.
Right. No, I it's always a blast coming on here. This is Bob After Dark's like a second home for me, and I always have a blast. So let's try and make this a little bit more often than what we've been doing, shall we?
Folks, thank you so much for watching and listening to another episode of Bob After Dark. Mom, I know you're probably asleep by now, but good night. Dad, wherever you are in the universe, I hope you're happy and comfortable. And to Tiff, no matter where you are in the world, I hope you are having the sweetest dreams of them all. Good night, everybody. And remember, the two most important rules of Bob After Dark are: not all who wander are lost, and as above, so below. Until next time.
Memoriam Development.
Oh.